Great. Thank you very much, Trent. I want to start off by saying, especially this seminar and presentation I'm about to give, one, it's not easy to follow Laura because that was a great session. But it's hard to follow her, but I'm glad that I'm after her because she'd probably tear apart some of what I'm about to share with you from an HR perspective. And I guess I'll give my little disclaimer now is that some of this may not be compliant with the laws in your region or jurisdiction or state, but nonetheless, I'm going to share with you a lot of details about our process and what we do. And before we do that, I want to go someplace really nice. And it's been a day filled with a lot of information, a lot of interesting information from a lot of great knowledgeable people. But I want to transition here to a vacation. And I want you to think about your dream vacation. And I want you to think about where you'd go. Who would you go with? What would you do? I mean, to me, this place right here on your screen looks pretty good to me. That looks like a nice place to go. I want you to think about that. Because we had a client, a ServeNow member, they're a husband and wife process serving team, and they had their dream vacation lined up. After they got married, they started building their business, and they jumped right in, and I'm sure a number of you know how hard it is to build a business and grow a business and keep your clients happy and keep the papers being served and keep the dollars coming in and everything that you have to do to run and operate that business. And so after many years, they got married. They were never able to take a honeymoon, go on their honeymoon, take a vacation. After many years, they saved up, and for 2 years, they planned their dream vacation. It was a husband, a wife, and their office manager, and they were running a very nice small business. And so the night before, they were getting ready to go on this dream vacation, finally getting their honeymoon. Their office manager, the person that they had entrusted to manage these relationships, was all set up to handle all the details while they were gone on their vacation, sends over a wonderful little text message the night before they're about to go that says, "I quit." So you can imagine the change that they had to make. They couldn't leave their clients hanging. They couldn't just leave their business there with nobody to attend to it. This terrible thing that their office manager, who they'd entrusted and treated really well over the years, just was totally disrespectful to these people and who they were. And granted, she may have had her reasons, but they were left in a position where they couldn't go. And so today, what I'm going to talk about is our hiring process, what goes into it, what we've done to retain our employees. And this applies to everybody out there. Even if you're just running a one-person operation and you don't have employees yet and you don't see them off on your horizon, eventually, to take your business to the next level, this is going to be important. And obviously, if you have employees, we know there's some very large organizations out there, the time and operational efficiency savings that comes from these lessons that we've cultivated over the years will save so much money and time that it's a really important session to go through. There's a lot here, but I want to get through it. I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as possible and get you on to the next session. So those of you that have employees, I can say with confidence, I don't have you all in a room, but I can guarantee you that those of you that have employees are going to be nodding your head with some of these things I'm about to say. Firstly, you've probably had employees that have stolen. You've had people that have lied. You've probably had people that have been late, provided poor customer service. Maybe they have taken clients away after they've left your company and either gone out on their own or taken them to the next firm where they went. Maybe some of them got you sued. And these are common occurrences when you bring employees in the mix. Unfortunately, it happens. I can tell you from our experience, our first hire was one of the worst hires that we made. Just a few weeks into the role, we realized we'd made a wrong decision. They were still in a probationary period. We ultimately terminated the relationship with them. And immediately, even though they were in a probationary period, came after us for wrongful termination, tried to get unemployment. It cost us a lot of time, a lot of money that we didn't have. And had we had some of the lessons I'm going to share with you today, it would have saved us a lot in that process. Little anecdote, last week I was in New York at a legal conference, and Justin Smith, who is the now CEO of Bloomberg Media, was talking about how he spends his time. And a majority of his time, and this is a company that's got millions of customers, the company as a whole has 15,000 plus employees. He's not responsible for all of them, but a majority of his time is spent on hiring, recruiting, and retaining the best talent for his organization. It really resonated because this is a huge firm, and you've got the CEO here that's spending as much of his time as possible working with the people, because he knows those are going to be, that's going to be what's going to hold the organization together and help take that organization to the next level. It's taken us years to figure this out. We make mistakes all the time. We don't always get it right, but we're fluid, we're dynamic. We try and take what we've done and learn from it and do a better job the next time. So here is kind of the first kind of motto that we try and live by. And again, we've made mistakes with this, but hire slow, fire fast. Never settle because you're desperate. In your world, you may be doing a few hundred papers or a few thousand papers a month, and all of a sudden you pick up a contractor or a client that's got another 500 or 1,000 papers that you're not going to be able to handle on your own or with your existing staff. So you get desperate. And so you say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to handle all this? And the reality of it is, you're going to lose that client if you don't hire the right person, and you're going to lose that client if you don't bring on anyone at all. So your best scenario is to get the right person in the role. And so one of the things that we found is that once someone's in a role, they don't change. When they've shown what their colors are and they're not a fit, you've got to get rid of them. And it's really hard to sometimes rip off that Band-Aid and get them out of there or pull the trigger. But when they're not the right fit and they're not going to make it, you've got to do it fast. And I think especially if you're a nice person, we've made that mistake before where we've had high hopes and we thought it would get better in conversation, and it doesn't. I can tell you personally, one of my biggest regrets in life is staying in personal relationships too long, but also staying in business relationships. And the deduction is we are always better off getting that person out of the company. They're better off because they can be in a different environment where they can hopefully thrive. We can get the right person in here. So there's some real dollars behind this as well. It's not just, oh, that didn't work out and it's not that big a deal. This is a question right here that I have, and hopefully you guys can all see it, and if you can't, I'll read it as well. What's the cost to recruit, hire, and train an $8 per hour employee? We're talking about somebody that's in a very, very junior role if they're, if they're even our wages that are currently at that level. I think you guys are going to be surprised, but think of what some of those numbers are in your head. And here's what it is. And this is a study that was conducted by the Sasha Corporation, and it's a big, big number. And this is hiring, training, and customer service disruption. For an $8 an hour employee, this is almost half of their annual salary is spent in that process. So it's not just this process is difficult and it didn't work and it's time consuming. There are real dollars that are associated with this, which is one of the reasons why it's so important. Here's a couple pictures of our team, and this is the Denver office having lunch. We've got an incredible team. We're in the best place that we've ever been in with our team. And a lot of this hinges on the fact that we've worked really hard to dial in this process, cultivate the team, and get the right people in the role. So this is kind of our philosophy on hiring, and it just stems from we're all busy people. We're running a business. There's always more to do. There's never enough time. And so our goal is to spend as little time and get the highest quality employee possible into the company. So what we used to do is spend a lot of time on this, and this is how we do it now. So now what we've done is we spend a lot of time writing the ad and the description. And fortunately, once we've done that one time, we've got a number of the details about what we need to be included kind of in that baseline template for the ad. And then we get into the nitty-gritty and the details of it. And this is what's really important for you. And by the way, I'll just throw this out there that if you guys want a copy of our ad, I'm not sure if it's going to be shared anywhere with the videos. And if not, my contact information is going to be at the end. Send me an email, and I will send you off a copy of the ad so you can see what it is that we're putting in them. But with that said, these are the details in the bullets that we found to be really, really important. We've made a lot of mistakes with this over the years, so this is what we try and do. We spend a lot of time. We try and talk directly to the candidate of who we want to attract. In our company, we want somebody that's obviously smart, is hardworking, is disciplined, but we also want them to be really fun and passionate. I mean, our culture is really important to us, and that's who's going to fit and thrive in this environment. If any of you, I'm sure a number of you are our customers, so you've had the opportunity to interact with our team. They're an incredible group of individuals. Again, we all have our days. We also don't always get it right, but they're amazing people. And this is what's come from our search and following these rules. So we talk about in our ads about it's work. We know it's work. We don't want it to feel like work. We talk about what's important for the role in terms of attention to detail, communication, personable. You know what's important for your role, and each one is going to be different. But it's really important to know really what are those details that you want to put in your ad, because you want to be able to give that information to that prospective candidate. An example is what's the important criteria for hiring a process server. Obviously, they need to be able to follow instructions. They need to be prompt. They probably need to have a car and clean driving record and insurance. Be able to communicate well. There are a number of criteria that are important for hiring a server. Maybe a little bit different, but a number of those pieces are probably important for hiring an admin or an office manager, or somebody in sales. So you need to define what those are. You want to always be honest. And this is something, when we were a very small company, we started this company in a dark, moldy basement, and I can tell you it was a little awkward when we brought our first employee over there to, they think that they're coming to this business, and we put this big kind of glamorous ad together, and they show up in a dark, moldy garage, and we were lying. We weren't really being honest with what it was. And I think people were taken aback by that because what they thought in the ad was different from what they got there. And there's no harm in working in a dark, moldy basement. I mean, that's where lots of startups and some of the most successful companies in the world started in somebody's garage. I think people can understand that, but make sure you're representing that. And so in your world, if they need to be in a car most of the day, or working with you, or working weekends, or late at night, or there are some details about the role, you got to share that, because you don't want somebody to come in there, it's a waste of your time and theirs, that they don't have a good sense of what this is. The other thing that we want to put in there is we put comp, even compensation, the amount, the dollars or the wages for the role. And if you don't know specifically what it is, we'll usually put in a range to attract kind of varying levels of compensation. I'll tell you how we kind of parse that out down the road. But you want to put something in there, because you don't want somebody that's making $100,000 and you only have a budget of $20,000. You want somebody applying for that role, because, again, it's going to be a waste of your time and their time. You will get people that, especially during the last downturn, you may get people that were at the 100,000 level and they've had such a hard time finding a job with their skill set, or the market has been so difficult, or the competition. You may be able to land somebody that was previously making a much higher compensation, but yet you want to give them the opportunity to make that decision, not have them be blindsided when they come in and learn about the compensation. So we used to predominantly use places like Craigslist and LinkedIn. Some places where I would suggest you go looking for candidates, there's a site called Indeed, which is another good site and seems to have a lot of traffic. classified ads, we've used newspapers, we've used job boards that are specific to certain types of areas of expertise. The associations, check with your state associations. They may have a classified section, or they may know people that are looking for work in that area. So that is some components of the anatomy of the ad, but there's a number of things that we ask for when we place that ad as well. So we write this whole detailed description about the company and details about the role and who we're looking for and who we are and what skills are really important. But we also ask for a number of details in this because at our company, we test for something that we've coined called MATD. And MATD stands for meticulous attention to detail. And our philosophy is, if you can't figure things out when you are applying for the job, when you are supposed to be on your best behavior, this is kind of the same scenario of when you go on a first date. I've been on a first date in years, but I can tell you when I was dating, I put my best foot forward. I did everything I could to appear to be my best. And when someone's applying for a job, they should be doing their best. And our philosophy is, if you can't follow these steps when you are trying your hardest and paying the close attention, there's no way you're going to be able to do this when we set you free with our cherished clients, who you're not going to have that level of detail and respect for, if you can't do it now. So here are the things that we ask for as part of our first test. So in that ad, we say, please leave please send your resume, send your current and past compensation, and this I'll address a little bit later, why you think you're a fit. We ask them to leave a phone message as well because we want to hear, one, we want to see if they do it, but we want to see why they think they're a fit, and we also want to hear how they sound. And there are other things that we're looking at as well, but I'll get to those in a second. And I guess another question for you is, what percentage of all applicants do you think do this? And obviously you can't yell out that number, but here's another surprising number that you're going to find. And it's a gift for us in the hiring process. 97% of all applicants fail to do those 4 things that we ask for and to do them properly. Some of them get 1, some of them get 2, but 97%. And this applies not only to junior or entry-level roles, across all the roles that we've hired for, we've had very similar results to this. So what that means is, in the old days, when we would put an ad out for a role, and there were some roles where we had hundreds of applicants for a role. And so what that would mean is, we, in the old days, would have to look at 100 or hundreds of resumes and try and deduce who they were and try and make some assumptions about them, which is really hard to do, from reading a book or from reading their resume, which is just a list of their most polished experiences possible. Sometimes they're not, and sometimes they're riddled with typos and a number of other things. But it saved us from having to do this. So now, instead of looking at 100 resumes and 100 emails, now I can look at 3. And I can look at the 3 that have gone through these steps and gone through the first round of the test to say, okay, they're competent, they can follow instructions, this is good. The next thing that we look at is, are there typos? How is their resume organized? What's their writing style like? If we're going to be setting them free with you guys or clients or the legal industry, are they writing professionally? We're looking at short stints to see if they're job hoppers. And we used to have this philosophy that it wouldn't happen to us, they would come here and love our culture. But if you see people that for the last 10 years have had 5 months to a year stints at 10 different companies, you know that they're a job hopper. And that's highly unlikely that they're going to change, even though they say, I want to find a place where I can be for a long time, I want a career. If they've always been a job hopper, chances are that's going to continue. They're either getting fired or they're realizing it's not a fit or they're not performing and they're moving on. You don't want to spend the time and money to bring them on and take that risk. The other thing that I look at in this phase is I look for generic responses, meaning if it looks like they're just sending me a generic email that they're sending out to every other role that they're applying for, that's not of interest to us. So we are very specific about who we're looking for. We're looking for candidates that want a role at our company. They want a career here. We don't want somebody that wants a job. We want somebody that wants to work here, and that's why it's really important that they follow these steps and that they look around and they answer the question about why they're a fit. So the next step of this is our next test. And granted, most of this I have not spent a lot of time on once this initial process is set up and you've been through it. Whereas historically, days would have gone by and I would have been doing this and spending tons of time just trying to make some assumptions about the applicants that are coming through. So the next phase of this is our test 2, and that is we follow up with a questionnaire. We use Google Docs for this. It's free to use, and you can put together a little form and a questionnaire, and we can aggregate all the candidates' responses into one automated document. And if you look on the slides here, and I'm going to have to look at my other screen to read this, so it's going to be, you'll see my eyes go away, but if you can't read, I want to read it to you. So it says Logical Client Concierge Interview, Part 1. Congratulations, you fulfilled all of the requirements listed in the Craigslist ad. You'd be surprised at how many applicants could not follow directions. I'm sure you guys were surprised as well. I was when we finally got the data. We'd like to get to know you a little bit more. We'd like to know a little bit more about you before scheduling a second round phone interview. So please fill out the form and submit before 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Thursday, June 7th, in order to be considered for further review. So I put a time in there because that's a next test. I'm giving them a specific task. We're asking them to do very specific things, and then I want it done by a certain time. Now, if they're getting this done at 6:59 on Thursday, then they're procrastinators, and that's a red flag. Not to say to preclude them from the role, but these are the things that we're looking at. And I said one more thing when answering these questions: be yourself. Don't simply write what you think we want to hear. And that ties into ultimately who we want to attract to this company. We want to get to know who these prospective candidates are and try and get an assessment of a culture fit for our company. If you look on the other side, that's where all of this information is aggregated all into one document. And this is a great way to initially compare the candidates in one centralized location. So now we're on to the next test. So they've been through this process, and now it's time to set up a phone call. But before we do that, we spend a little more time looking at these candidates, and we look at social media. We do a quick search for their name. You can search for their name plus location if they've got a very common name. You guys know how to do data searches probably far better than I do. These are some of the things that we look at. We'll do a search for their email address, see what comes up. This is important because depending on your values as a business owner and operator, and if you're an employee listening to this, this is really important if you're going to be going out looking for a role. There are employers out there that don't want to see certain things out there publicly available for their employees. And it's pretty surprising what you can find just by doing a quick little search and what's out there. Not to say it precludes them from a role, but you want to have a sense of who this candidate is, as well as what one of your clients, if one of your big law firms goes and does a search for your customer service representative and they find some stuff that's very questionable online or questionable pictures, that's not going to look great for you. So just something you want to be aware of, and these are some of the things where Laura may, if she were listening to this seminar, I don't know if she is, but might chime in with some of her HR laws chiming in and letting me know that maybe isn't something that you want to do. Nonetheless, it's something that we will look at. And then after you've aggregated these and you've looked at this information, you want to take them to the next level, we set up a 15-minute phone call. And again, with this 15-minute phone call, it's about diligence, it's about testing. The next test is I give them a time, and I give them a telephone number, and my signature has a different telephone number than the telephone number I give them. Do they call from the signature, or are they calling the number that I've given them? And are they calling me on time? I give them a very specific time. So, and by the way, before I do, I give them some options just because I want to be respectful of their time. So, so I ask them to call, see if they're on time. I also get a sense of their seriousness and how serious they're taking this interview. Are they calling me on their drive home? Are they in a loud environment? Are they risking being cut off on their cell phone or being distracted, during the job interview? That's something that's not going to bode very well for us, is that they haven't taken this seriously. And it makes us question their instincts and their judgment. But assuming they're in a good place, we're letting them know that this is a two-way street. We're interviewing you and testing them just as much as they should be interviewing us and testing us, and getting a sense for, is this a right fit for them? Because we only want to work with people that want to work with us. And that's why it's so important for them to know who we are and what we do. So my test for that is, do they know what we do? I say, once I've given them a little intro, I say, do me a favor, tell us what you know about our company or what we do or anything you know about me. And if they say, oh, you know what, I don't know, I've applied for a lot of roles, or I didn't have time to look, or I was hoping you would tell me, that's somebody that they're not prepared for the most important conversation, one of the most important conversations that they can have, their career. They're not going to be prepared when you set them free with your clients. So it's time to move on. They don't have the right instincts or judgment to prepare for this. We want people that are prepared. So, but if they do well, you move on to the next round. And nothing, cut them out. They're gone. Move on. Next test. So again, testing diligence, testing their ability to follow tasks. And we know very few people have fax machines. But the wherewithal to figure out how to get something scanned or faxed, you'd be surprised at how many people can't do that. So what I do is, again, I send them another email, direct fax line, different from what's in my signature. And this is, I send them off an application. And, and with that application, there are obviously a number of details that are in that application that we're looking at in terms of their diligence and their penmanship and a number of other things. But can they get that fax back to me, within a reasonable time? And I've had people say, oh, I don't have a fax machine. And my reaction to that, even though I probably don't say this, is if you can't figure out how to get to a Kinko's or find somebody that has a fax machine or figure out how to scan, you're not resourceful enough to be in our company, and you're probably not going to be a good fit. But when we do get that in, and it does come to the right place, and they have passed that little test, we're looking at their penmanship. We're looking at the details that are on there. There's also some questions about their compensation, more details, questions about their compensation, and other things that are more specifics about their role and their role history. So then the next round, and I know this is where we're starting to put more time in, because I've reviewed a couple things so far for each one of these candidates. I've had a 15-minute phone call for each one of them, but I haven't really spent a lot of time doing that up until this point. So this is our long phone interview. Again, we schedule it with them. We ask them to call to make sure that they're calling us on time. This call usually takes an hour, but this is where we're deep diving, and we already have their application, so we have a lot of this information already in front of us. And we can look at the companies and ask very specific things about, so what did you do at Wells Fargo? And how would that relate to working with process servers, or very specific things? And and I'm looking for them to connect those details about what they did and what we do to see where there's that connection of how that skill set applies to our role. So on top of that, though, we're also really deep diving on their background, where they're from, where they were raised. We want to get into, do they take pride? What's their work ethic? Take pride in their work. What's their work ethic like? We ask them about pet peeves and things that are important for them in a role, things that they aren't happy about in their current role or in their past roles, or things that frustrated them. We're looking for, again, MATD. And if you don't know what questions to ask here, there's so much information out there. Just do a Google search on what to ask prospective candidates. chances are, if they're a capable candidate, they're probably Googling those same questions, but nonetheless, you've got some baseline in which to go with. So now more time is getting committed. We're getting a lot more serious with this candidate. We are now bringing them in for an in-person interview. This takes a lot more time, but like I said in the past, rather than 3 applicants of 100, assuming all 3 of those make it through, which usually maybe 1 or 2 of them gets weeded out, we would maybe do this with 15, 20 people. Now we're narrowing this down to far less. So we bring them in-house. We want, again, make sure they're on time, make sure they found the location. How are they dressed? Unless we told them, otherwise, we have a very casual environment. But sometimes people still dress up when they get to our office. Even if it's a small office, our Denver office is pretty large, but our Los Angeles office is pretty small, and so it's literally look to your left, look to your right. Here's our office. That's the tour. But we want to get them familiar with the environment and get them a sense of what the environment's like, so they know what to expect. We'll also introduce them to the other candidates that are there, so that they can get a sense of who their prospective colleagues would be, because it's important for them to know what type of environment they're going to be in. When they're there and we're going through this, we're looking at body language. I would imagine that you guys listening to this are a phenomenal skills at assessing body language and sizing people up just by looking at them, because you're doing that on a daily basis out there in the field. But that's what you want to do with these candidates. You want to look at what's happening with them and try and get a sense, a better sense to see if they're a fit. Ask questions that are important for the role, and if you have other employees there, bring them in, because they may have a perspective on the role or something that's existing in the role, so they can share exactly some of those details about it. One of the things, and this just came up, is we had a candidate. So a question that I asked is, after that interview, they've left, do they send a thank you? Every single piece of literature out there on applying for a job talks about sending a thank you after you've had an interview. We just had a great candidate apply for one of our roles, and it was a customer service role, and they didn't send that thank you, and we were really struggling internally in terms of what to do. It's not a big deal, who cares, but that instinct of, are they thinking about customer service when they're on their best behavior? They ultimately didn't end up working out anyway, not just because of that thank you note, but that's another little piece of, especially if this is a customer service role, you want to make sure they know. There's just some people that don't know the importance of that or to do that, but depending on the role, people should know that. It should be important. So they've gotten through the initial phone call, the fax test, they've gotten through the hour-long deep diving phone call, they've gotten through the in-person phone call. You now have a candidate that you want to make an offer to, okay? You've done your research, you've looked at as much as you can. There still are a couple other pieces that are important that we still look at even this phase, and we've gotten people all the way to this phase and then uncovered some things that we said that made us question and think, are they going to be a right fit for this role? So, if you saw in the previous session, Laura, contractor, versus employee, obviously you've got to understand all the legal details of it. But something that we ask for are pay stubs. And the reason why we ask for is we want to know that initial, and I talked about this earlier in terms of compensation and why we have that range, we want to know if that initial compensation range, or that compensation that they put on their application and in their email, is the same as what they're actually getting. And what some people will do is, if they're making $20,000 a year and they see a role for $40,000 a year, they'll put their compensation at close to that, because they know employers are going to say, well, you were making 20 before, now you want 40. That's a big jump in your compensation. So this is the test. You ask for the pay stub and you can see it. And we actually had a candidate. We got all the way down the road, and when we finally got this pay stub, we realized that they weren't totally accurate, and that disqualifies them. They weren't being honest, and that disqualifies them for a role at our company. The next thing we do is we talk to references. Obviously, professional references, their direct managers are always the best. Sometimes they're no longer at the company, or the company's gone. Maybe ask for a cell phone. We try to get to those direct reports, and at the very least, substantiate their their tenure there and their compensation. Really in California, there's where I am headquartered. That's really what most firms will respond. They will confirm their compensation and they will confirm their time in the role. That's it. That said, I still ask other questions because sometimes people give it to me in some of the most useful information that we can garner. I ask them about their strengths. I ask them about if there are things that you felt the candidate could improve on, because this saves us months of somebody in a role figuring out what they're good at, figuring out their weaknesses and what areas need help. And if we know that at the onset, we can jump right in and start cultivating those. We also ask about what type of management style works best for them. And in a lot of scenarios, we'll get these questions answered, and it will give us so much intelligence on how to work with that candidate. The other thing that I found unbelievably enlightening, and it is unbelievable how a candidate's friend or roommate will throw them under the bus and the things that they'll share, but references from personal references from friends can be unbelievably accurate and honest. And frankly, I've been a little blown away at what people have shared, but it's been very eye-opening from our perspective of, is this person a fit? All right, so we've done our due diligence. We realize they're a fit, and now it's time to make the offer. So this is where you want to get legal involved. Make sure you're doing everything by the book. You have agreements. You want to make sure this is contingent upon your due diligence and that you're doing a pre-employment screen. Especially if this is a role where they're touching sensitive data or money. You want to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's on that front. But we're putting together an offer with an NDA, which is a non-disclosure, non-compete, non-solicitation, and inventions agreement, just to make sure that we're covering all our bases on the offer, and we're going over with them. And this is, like I said, something that we've worked on and refined with our counsel. This is really important to have a good document in place. So they made that offer, they've accepted, and now is really the work. So that's our process of how we have gone through and how we've cultivated our hiring process to get the candidates into our company. It's a lot of information. It's taken a lot of pain to get to that point where we've created this process. But I can tell you these simple steps that I've shared with you, even though they seem like a lot, have saved us hundreds and hundreds of hours of lost productivity. And we've got an incredible team to show for it. So the next phase is keeping good employees. And now that you've got them, how do you keep them? So I've got a picture here of the happy Apple employees, which that's an anomaly of a company. I don't understand how people will wait, camp out overnight, or 6 hours in line to pay retail for a product that they can just walk in the next day and get. But Apple's created this incredible culture and environment. You go in there, and they've got very, very happy employees. And there's a lot of great examples at that. Zappos is another company. The shoe, they're an online shoe company, Zappos.com. If you haven't seen them, their philosophy is, we're in the customer service business. We just happen to sell shoes. And they focus a lot on happy employees and empowered them to really take care of their customers. So this next section is about, you've got them on there. How do you prevent them from sending you that text message the night before your dream vacation, so that you're not pinned to a corner and really, really put in a bad spot. So I'll tell you one thing. All of the studies that I've ever seen about retaining quality employees, in my mind, it always seemed about, you just pay them more money and they'll stay. And we try and do that, but we have limits in terms of what we can do in that capacity. But all of the studies show that it's really about empowerment, clear role definition, goals, and the culture are really, all the studies show that those are the most important reasons why people stay. It's not compensation. And so, we were always wrong in that. We tried. We struggle. This is an area where we struggle, where we're constantly working on it and evolving. But we're fortunately always going in the right direction. So compensation is important. So I'll talk about it. So your compensation needs to be clear in terms of what it is, and you also want to have a clear structure for how they get to the next level. We used to do something that was an annual bonus, and we found it to be rather insulting because we'd get to the end of the year around the holidays, and we'd rehash the entire year and say, well, January was great, March we had this little issue, and July was really neat, and then September, what happened there? It's just insulting. So one of the paradigm shifts that we made in our company is we started doing quarterly reviews. And along with a quarterly review came a quarterly bonus. And this allowed everybody in the company to, one, get some clear guidance on what their goals are, but two, it's a 360. So they get to say to us what's working, what's not working, what we can be doing better as a company. It's a very, very open dialogue where we're mutually setting these goals. And if they are surpassing these goals, of which they have a part in scoring these goals, there's additional compensation for them that can come from it. Another focus on compensation is making all roles, or as many of the roles, revenue generating. And what I mean in your world is you may have an office manager who, or a receptionist who's on the phones, but they may be done, or phones may be slow, or they may have logged all the details, and there should never be idle time in your organization. They should be out sending flyers, prospecting for clients, going through your existing clients that haven't sent you work in a while, and picking up the phone and saying, hi, this is so-and-so from XYZ process. We haven't had any work from you. Did we do something wrong? We'd love the opportunity to serve for you. Give them an incentive. Find a way to make as many of your roles revenue generating. When your servers are out in the field, drop a flyer up. They're going and serving in a corporate building. It's pretty easy to see which firms are law firms. Bring some flyers with, drop in there, give them an incentive to try you out. And you can even incentivize them to do that as well. So that's our piece on compensation. Next is train. Train and overtrain. Your employees will only know what they're taught. And what we do is we create a living doc for each one of the roles that we have at the company, and it's ongoing, where we're talking about what's important for this role, the duties of this role. It also really helps the next time we have to bring somebody in, because we don't have to start from scratch. It takes time, but you get out of it what you put into it, and it's super important. I'll share with you a little bit of information about our company. It's taken us a long time to be able to do this, but we realized that the happier and the more comfortable our employees are, the better they are. And so we do whatever we can from a benefit standpoint. Nothing is off the charts. We'll entertain anything. Some of the things, we do some of the basics now in terms of health, vision, dental. We contribute to a health savings account. A benefit to our company is we have casual dress, unless we're seeing clients where we dress up, or you're at a trade show. You bring your dog to work. Snacks, we've got Friday lunches. We built a really nice, conducive office space here in the Denver office. Same thing in Los Angeles. We have some folks that work remotely from their homes. We just started this. We have a masseuse that comes in every other week and gives chair massages to the team. And it's been actually pretty fun since I've been here in Denver. They just got a ping pong table out here, which is great for the team, and actually a pretty fun thing to do. Wellness, we've got medicine balls that people can sit on. We had yoga at one point, which we need to bring back. We want to get stand-up desks, and whatever things that we can do to help make this culture easier and more beneficial for our team, we want to do it, and we're going to try as long as we can afford. Like I said, it's taken us years to get to this point where we can do it. There's still a lot more that we want to do. So here is the final thing, and this is going to sound crazy, especially when you first see it, but this is one of those biggest preventers of the night before the night before you're about to go on that dream vacation, or you just landed that huge client, or something big is about to happen in your business, and your key employees quit. So we instituted something called a quitting bonus. I know it sounds crazy, but the benefit is really for us, because what it forces us to do is, when somebody typically gives notice, you're forced to assuming they give you 2 weeks, that's not a lot of time. But there are a couple criteria that we ask for along with the quitting bonus. And what I mean by quitting bonus is, we will roll out the red carpet and incentivize our employees to leave, because we don't want anybody here that doesn't want to be here. And if they want to be somebody else, we want to get them out of here as best we can. So there's criteria to that, though. So we ask for a 30-day notice before they do that, so that we have time. We ask for them to clean up their role description doc to make sure we've got details of it. If we want their help, we'll ask them to help train their replacement and help with that onboarding process. We'll also get a legal release from them, which hopes to cut down on any future litigation. And I will tell you, I know it sounds crazy, but this is totally a benefit for us. Yes, we're paying hard dollars out, especially if it's a bad candidate. It sometimes feels awkward giving them money to leave, but getting that notice and not having to drop what you're doing and having that time to prep for that transition is worth its weight in gold. We didn't invent this. This was actually something that also we adopted, components of it from Zappos and the company that I mentioned earlier. You can have your own spin on it in terms of how you do it, but what it is totally cut down on is people showing up, coming in one day and saying, I quit, I'm out, and leaving us in a really, really bad position. And those bad positions are only worse when you've got a small staff where that one person is responsible for a lot. So that's my presentation, and I'm going to turn this over for questions.
All right, Adam, I will jump back in here. Thank you very much. Great job. We'll be on for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. I'm not seeing any right now. Adam, I do think you missed out on one of the major benefits of this office space, which I'm going to adjourn to here in about 10 minutes. You want to let them know what that is, or should I?
Well, I presume you're probably going to go after the next session. But yeah, so we share a wall with a brewery, which is also a pretty nice perk of the office, that you can literally open a door and be in a brewery. If there aren't, and Trent, before we make that transition to the next session, if there aren't any questions, firstly, I want to share my contact information. And if there are questions after the session, here's my information. By the way, I have a Twitter account. I'm now on Twitter. Yay. I'm sharing information about things that I'm reading or what I think are interesting that are happening in the legal industry, or things I'm reading for our business. So that's my Twitter handle, but also my email is on there. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any specific questions about this, or obviously you can always pick up the phone and call. Before I sign off, though, I want to leave you with a quote. And this is something that's really relevant, and there's a number of great quotes out there. I'll leave this up there for one more second. But here's the quote that I love, and it's just so relevant to your team and your culture.